I'm tying up a warm water topwater fly today. This is called a Sneaky Pete. If you look around, you'll see various different flies called Sneaky Petes tied with different things. This just has a Marabou tail and a Rooster hackle that is collared in there behind it. A lot of them will have, if they're commercially made, they'll have a harder cork and or polystyrene head on them, and they'll have fancy eyes painted on them and everything. But you don't have to have that to benefit from fishing a Sneaky Pete. Now, the Sneaky Pete is basically a slider fly. It, like a Dahlberg diver, it just slides in the water, and the advantage there is sometimes the fish get kind of spooked with a popper that has, that sharp pop and a lot of disturbance and noise to it. Whereas a slider will just kind of, when you strip it, depending on how hard you pull it, it just kind of dives underneath the surface and then wobbles back up. A lot of times I fish these and I get many hits when it's pulled right under the water and it's just under the water an inch or so, and then it floats back up. They'll just nail it when it's right under the water. The fact that this doesn't disturb the water a lot, but it disturbs enough to get their attention, but it doesn't disturb it enough to kind of spook them and make them apprehensive. So sliders are great to have. This is made with a pre-foam head on it, so it's really, really easy. You don't have a hard cork body or polystyrene to deal with or anything. You can crank a bunch of these out in different sizes, different colors and combinations. And Sneaky Pete, it's a great fly to have if you're happen to be out fishing warm water circles. I'll get started tying. I'm going to start my Sneaky Pete with the hook on the vise. This is a Mustad 3366 in a size 4. Now, the size of the hook is going to be determined on the size of the body that you're using on these. Depending on the manufacturer and where you buy them from, they have anywhere from 4 to 5 different sizes on them. The one that I'm going to use on this is a size 2. So I'm going with the size 4 hook. If I use the size 1, I could probably get down to, say, a size 8 hook, something a little bit, if you're looking for panfish mostly, a little bit more manageable panfish. It will be a good bass fly as well as panfish. And then you could go with larger poppers if you wanted, a larger hook like a 1/0, 2/0, something like that if you want the larger head sizes. The key to the Sneaky Pete is that the popper head is tied on in reverse so that it points down to the eye of the hook. So it ends up being more of a slider that slides under the water. Now, after you debarb your hook, you're going to attach your thread. I've got a Danville 3/0 wax monocord that I'm going to use for this. You could use a 210 denier if you want, or you could use, say, a GSP or something like that if you want something kind of heavy, though, because there's a lot of stuff that's going to be tied in here. First thing you want to do is you want to get your body on the hook. And this is important because we're going to tie in our tail section in this area right here. But we don't want any of that tail section invading in this area. That's where the head's going to be tied on. If I take the head off and I just attach my thread and I tie it in, I'm very likely to go past this tie-in spot and then fill in some of that area in the head space, or I should say the body space, with the tail. On this hook, it's kind of easy to remember because it's right about where the point of the hook is, but on other hooks it might be a little different. So I find it's better to just put the body on the hook first. One thing to say about that is many of these come already pre-slit. So as you can see, this has a slit already in it. Normally, these would go on like this. So that slit is basically designed so it goes halfway up in the face here, and you would tie this on like this on the hook to give you that nice cup face for a nice popper on the water. that works because, I mean, this hook and this setup will work because you're keeping the gap of the hook pretty much open. You could tie that in with this up a little bit higher on the hook shank if you wanted to. It doesn't have to be down on the face, but you want to keep this gap nice and open. If you reduce this gap here, you reduce the hook setting capability of the fly. That you have to keep in mind, because when we put this on the other way, if we were to put that on just like we did in the front view, this would go on the hook like this. You're going to have this taper down towards the eye. If you push this all the way down, you see now you're closing up the gap of the hook. So you want to have this, for a sneaky peek, kind of raised up a little. You're going to have this part here down to the eye of the hook so that it has that nice diving action to it. But this back part, we want to raise that up almost to the very bottom here, a little bit further down in, so that we're maximizing the gap of the hook here. So with that said, I'm going to attach my thread back here. Now you could, if you're more comfortable, what you could potentially do, instead of doing it like this, is to put the body on here like this, turn this over, make a little mark with a Sharpie or something on your hook, then take the body off, then attach your thread and start working backwards. Either way, the important thing is that right here is the end of the tail space. We don't want to get anything tied in here, or very, very little that invades that space, because then the body will be anchored down a lot better. This also goes for tying just a regular popper if you want to. Like I said, you can take this, the Sneaky Pete's just basically a regular popper with the head turned around the other way. That's all. So I'm going to tie in my first material here. I'm using some Marabou. You could use bucktail, you could use squirrel tail, you can use schlop feathers, whatever you want for the tail. It's really up to you. I like Marabou on these because it just has a life of its own. I'm going to tie this in so it's about 1.5 times the length of the hook. So I want this a little bit longer. I'm going to anchor this down just in front of the body here. I should say in front of where the end of the tail is going to be. And the end of the tail goes down right about to the barb, just a little over the bend a little bit. That's fine because we don't have much space to anchor all this down. Then I want to make certain that I'm cutting this short enough so that it does not invade any of the body space. Wrap all that down. Get that secured. We're going to tie in some rubber legs. I'm also going to put some head cement on here, and you can do this throughout the process of tying this fly just to secure that a little bit more, to help that be a little bit more rugged, withstand the rigors of catching bass and panfish on these things. I'm going to tie in some rubber legs. I'm using some medium round rubber legs in black. I'm just going to tie a pair. These are maybe about 2.5 inches long. I'm going to tie a pair of them on one side and a pair on the other side. I'm going to tie these long because then I can just go ahead and trim them to length. Again, keeping in mind you don't want to have those rubber legs extend up into the body space. Get those wrapped down, and I'm doing separate just because I want to make certain I keep these on the sides and they don't come up around on the top. I don't think it really matters in terms of, I think it still fishes very well, but this is going to keep those rubber legs in the water and kind of floating and splaying out at rest when you are fishing this fly. Get all that tied in real well. I'm going to bring this back and I'm going to trim these so they're a little bit longer than the tail. Again, I'm going to put a little head cement on here just to kind of soak down, make that a little bit more rugged. Now I'm going to tie in a hackle on the back. Again, this is all kind of standard popper stuff, if you look at poppers, topwater sliders, and things like that, you look at the tail sections of them, they all basically have some sort of a material back here and some rubber legs and some sort of hackle palmered around there, or not palmered, but collared around. I'm using some strung Rooster saddles here. I like these because they're a little stiffer. You can use schlappen if you want, but I like these because the barbs are a little bit stiffer and they tend to stay out. Sometimes the schlappen, especially when it gets wet, will just kind of fold down on itself and kind of get lost in the Marabou. But I have used both to great success, so keep that in mind. Now I'm going to wrap my thread down right here around the point of the hook, just kind of giving myself the smooth transition down here. I just don't want that to, I know it's getting just a little bit into the body space here, but I don't want that ledge there. So when I wrap this down, now I'm going to advance my thread just up to the eye of the hook just to get it out of the way. I'm going to wrap in that strung Rooster saddle hackle. You can do this in a little bit of an open spiral if you want. You could shorten up that tail space a little bit if your feathers aren't that long and you want to, especially if you're tying this on a smaller hook, you just want to fill that in a little bit. You're going to get up to just about the point of the hook, which is going to be the back end of that body. And you can take a wrap or two of this into the body if you want, because when we put that foam head on, those will kind of be laid down rearward. Unwrap my thread. Now wrap over that, securing that in. And then I can trim away the excess. You'll notice that that hackle did go into the body space just a little bit. That's fine. As I put that body in, I want to secure this down just a little bit here. Not quite back to the point of the hook. As I secure that in, see, all of this will be kind of pointed backwards, so the body will still wrap around there, and there's plenty of room on the hook to glue it on. But these hackles will stand out from right behind that body a little bit more than, say, some schlappen, or even if you palmered in a Marabou or something. So with my tail section done, I'm going to run my thread up to behind the eye of the hook. Then I'm going to come back down again, trying to get a nice layer of thread down here. Then I'm going to bring it up in a little bit more of an open wrap. I want to have some gaps in the thread there. The gaps in the thread give me a little bit more surface area for the super glue, CA glue, Zap-A-Gap, whatever you want to call it, to attach to that thread. Now you can use whatever CA glue you're comfortable with, whether it's thick or thin or gel or whatever. The trick to this is you don't have a whole lot of working time. So depending on what you're using, if you're using a gel, you'll have more working time. Two things I'm going to do. And you can test this if you want prior to doing this. So in other words, do a dry run. But what I'm going to do, because it's a little harder for me to pinch this and get around on the top to put this in, I'm going to turn the fly over here so that I'm pinching this, and then I'm bringing it up from the bottom like this. And again, you can do a dry run here if you want. So think about doing just a test on how to get that on up there. You're going to get that there. Then you're going to squeeze that bottom shut like this so that the super glue will glue the bottom shut. But you don't want that bottom protruding way down into the gap of the hook. So I suggest you do a couple of dry runs, just to make certain that you got that figured out. Once you pretty much get this body on this glue, this is, by the way, a Loctite super glue. It is a ultra liquid control, but it is a little thicker than your regular, but it's not quite a gel. So I got a little bit of work time here, but not a huge amount. I'm gonna run this up there, get my tip down behind the eye of the hook, get that bottom lined up about right, make certain it's vertical there. Now it's already setting up down under there, and that's fine, because now I'm going to squeeze that together. It's going to squeeze some of that adhesive down into that crack, and it's going to seal up that slit on the underside. One thing to be careful of, you'll notice that my fingers are kind of black. Yeah, I tied a few of these. The black dyes on a lot of these feathers, like Marabou and Schlappen and things, can definitely come off on your hands. That's one downside working with the foam heads on this. If you get a whole lot on there, that dye starts to come out on the outside of the foam head. Now, I have never found any issues with fishing this fly. You could take this out right now, cast it just the way it is, and you'll catch fish with it, I guarantee you. So having a little bit of that dark dye on there is not really going to mess it up. If you're tying these with the foam, now if you're going to tie these with a cork or like a polystyrene that's hard and you're going to paint them, then it's really not an issue. At this point, this fly could be done if you want. You can take a needle and put some rubber legs in the body if you want to. You can, most often what I do is just take a Sharpie and just put some eyes right up on the front right here. Just like that. If you would rather, you could put some doll eyes on there. These have a pearl 3D prism eye on them. Those are super glued down to it. But like I said, 95% of the time, this is exactly what I'm tying, and I'm fishing as a Sneaky Pete. So, simple, straightforward little topwater fly. If you're in warm water circles, somewhere where you're fishing for bass and panfish, having some Sneaky Petes is a wonderful, wonderful fly. Sometimes that can make your day. Thanks for watching today. Thank you for joining me at the Vise today. I hope you learned a new pattern, at least a tip or trick here and there. If you'd like to help Dress Irons, you can like, comment, share, subscribe, all those wonderful things for the video. You can also head out to dressedirons.com where you can buy flies, tools, stickers, and merch, or you can join a growing community over on Locals at the Dressed Irons Fly Tying Guild. You can also donate to Dressed Irons if you want through the link at the bottom of the description. I thank everybody for their ongoing support, as it really does help the creation of these videos. And what's important is to remember, only fly tying. If you're not having fun, you're doing it wrong.